What's going on, y'all? This is John Alsace with Facemask Fantasy. We got new up-to-date fantasy content coming your way every day on this channel, so if you have not subscribed already, then please hit that button. But before we get into our main topic for today, my co-host Nick Payne put in a ton of work to give you guys a free 2021 Redraft draft kit available on our website, which can be found at facemaskpod.com. It's a great piece of content, something that other analysts might be charging you for, but we're giving it to you for free. So without further ado, let's get into some fantasy talk. And today is the day that I thought would never come. Bryan Edwards has the X role on the Raiders all to himself because the Raiders just released John Brown. Now, I like John Brown, and he supposedly requested this trade, so I wish him the best elsewhere. But the Raiders are moving forward with the young guns, Henry Ruggs, Bryan Edwards, alongside Willie Snead and Hunter Renfrow at the wide receiver position. Now, obviously, Darren Waller is there, and he's a winner from this too. But I am really happy that I heavily invested in my guy Bryan Edwards throughout the past year in most fantasy situations that I'm in. He was one of my favorite wide receivers to come out of college last year, and I know he disappointed in year one. I think partially that was due to injury, partially that was due to John Gruden's offense just being a lot to handle for a rookie. But he's about to step into the Nelson Agholor role from a year ago, and this is absolutely 100% confirmed with this release of John Brown. Now, ESPN's Jeremy Fowler reported that the trust between Bryan Edwards and QB Derek Carr is palpable at Raiders camp and has been all throughout the offseason. Bryan Edwards apparently ran with the first team offense ahead of John Brown for much of training camp, which is why John Brown ended up wanting to be cut in the first place. He just didn't think he had a place on this team as currently constructed. Bryan Edwards was not just getting rave reviews from the beat reporters, he was also getting rave reviews from the coach, John Gruden, and Derek Carr throughout the offseason. Earlier in his career, he was comped to a young Davante Adams by Derek Carr, who played with Davante Adams in college before he blossomed into the receiver he is today with Rodgers. But in college, Derek Carr saw glimpses of what Adams was destined to be. He knows what that's like. He knows what playing with that is like. And he's been playing with that, I believe, for about a year now. Bryan Edwards just needed to catch up. Now, the Raiders selected South Carolina wide receiver Bryan Edwards with the 81st overall pick in the 2020 NFL Draft. And he came into the league 6'3", 212, so he's got a prototypical body frame for an ex-wide receiver in the NFL, a number one wide receiver in the NFL. He finished with the third most receptions, 324, and fourth most receiving yards, 3,045 in SEC history. That's insane. He recorded 55 catches alongside teammate Deebo Samuel in 2018 before being peppered with 26.5% of the team's receptions as the go-to receiver in 2019. Edwards showcased straight line speed on film, but he broke his foot in February before the draft, which prevented him from competing in the Senior Bowl and performing at the Combine. Despite that, he ran a 4.53 at his pro day, no slouch, and that's no easy feat for somebody coming off of a broken foot. Seriously. Now, Edwards does come with some injury history. In the November before the February in which he broke his foot prior to starting his NFL career, he had a meniscus tear, and in 2017, he had surgery for a sports hernia and also suffered a concussion. But he has the youngest breakout age ever recorded, ever at 17.8. He broke out against SEC competition as a 17-year-old. That's literally unheard of. Nobody's ever done that. Seriously, nobody. Some have come close. DeAndre Hopkins had a breakout age of 18.2, as did Amari Cooper. Sammy Watkins, who at one time was thought to be one of the greatest wide receiver prospects in recent history before foot injuries really derailed his career, he also had a breakout age of 18.2. Keenan Allen, breakout age of 18.4. DJ Moore, 18.4. Robert Woods, 18.4. It's not a perfect metric for gauging how good a prospect will be in the pros, but a 17-year-old true freshman winning against older players at a point in a human being's physical development when a year or two can be a massive difference. This is a lot more meaningful for projecting future production than a 22-year-old redshirt senior producing against younger players. Once again, Bryan Edwards, youngest age-adjusted breakout ever for a wide receiver. Working against him is the fact that the Raiders targeted wide receivers on just 43.4% of their pass attempts in 2020. That was the lowest in the league, and that's unsurprising to anybody who's watched Darren Waller the past few seasons. He's getting 15 to 20 looks weekly. But Nelson Agholor was able to compile 896 yards and 8 touchdowns as the X-receiver in this offense. And Edwards has a much higher ceiling than Agholor from an athletic standpoint, just from a profile standpoint. Agholor was the wide receiver 21 last year, a low-end wide receiver 2 on 82 targets. Edwards can approximate that production on the same target share, and I think there's reason to believe that he'd demand closer to 100 targets in this offense once he's asserted himself as the dominant force I believe he can be this season. Now, the presence of Darren Waller will always dampen his value, because as long as Darren Waller is on this team and in his prime, which he firmly is, Darren Waller will lead this team in targets. But Darren Waller's presence also forces coverages into difficult positions. Do they double Waller? A good DC would, but then you got former first-round pick Josh Jacobs in the backfield, former first-round field stretcher Henry Ruggs, and you got my guy Bryan Edwards out there in single coverage. And when he's left in single coverage, Edwards is just going to outmuscle any cornerback in the league. Again, he's 6'3", 212 pounds. In season long, he's the cheapest wide receiver 1 in the league. His ADP is 183, that's wide receiver 65. People are drafting wide receiver 3s on people's teams before Bryan Edwards. And while in some cases, some rare situations, like in the case of Tampa Bay with Antonio Brown, yes, Antonio Brown's season-long outlook is more easily projectable than Bryan Edwards is. But that's literally the only situation I can think of off the top of my head across the NFL where the wide receiver 3 on a NFL team should be drafted ahead of the wide receiver 1 on the Raiders. In DFS, he's got an underdog ADP of 127, wide receiver 61. That's a higher ADP, but he's still wide receiver 61. He's the starting X receiver in a role that netted a wide receiver with half the athletic profile this guy has, low-end wide receiver 2 value, and he's free. In Dynasty, this is where you're gonna have to pay up, but it's still likely less than you're gonna be paying a year from now, and I'd put a fair amount of money on it. I mean, I actually technically already have, because I put my money where my mouth is. He's on the majority of my Dynasty rosters. He's on the majority of my fantasy rosters. So what do you guys think about Bryan Edwards? Do you guys think, like me, everything that's happened in the offseason for the Las Vegas Raiders points to Bryan Edwards stealing that Nelson Agholor role and running away with it in a role where he can absolutely net wide receiver 2 numbers if he stays healthy all season? Put your thoughts in the comment section below. My name is John Alsace, and this is Facemask Fantasy. We bring you new up-to-date fantasy content every day right here on this channel, so if you have not subscribed already, please hit that button. Thank you for listening and have a great day.